welcome to S2S Conversations with Peter and Zia. And today we just feel so honored and excited to introduce our very special guest, Maria Wheatley. Maria is a master dowser, a researcher, and an author of so many books on earth energies and sacred sites, and including her new book, The Secret History of Stonehenge, which we will be talking about a little bit later. And she is also a teacher. She offers dowsing workshops at sacred sites in the UK and all over the world. And so, Maria, a very, very hearty welcome to you, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It feels really good to be here.
So perhaps you could begin, Maria, by telling us a bit about the role of dowsing and discerning earth energies and how that appeared in your life and how that's evolved for you. And can you share a bit about your Avebury experiences? I know you have a very close connection, as I do, to the whole structure of Avebury.
Yes, well, I got into dowsing and ancient sites really through my late father, who was considered one of the UK's foremost master dowsers. And he got taught by German master dowsers, Chinese feng shui masters. And I followed in those footsteps with those amazing teachers, even Italian master dowsers. So I kind of blend East and West with dowsing as well. I'm not stuck in just a Western tradition. And that was my true passion, if you will. And my journey began at Avebury, really, because when I was attuning to the site and the ancestors old there, I discovered a long lost astronomical alignment, well, two astronomical alignments, one to the sun and one to the moon, both of which had gone unnoticed for 4,500 years. So that's how I got into Avebury. Avebury just opened her arms to me and said, look what others haven't seen. And one of those lunar alignments that was really quite powerful is coming back. It only occurs every 18.61 years. It's called the night of the high moon. And we're approaching that night of the high moon. A bit like the summer solstice has the longest amount of daylight. The night of the high moon, at its most northerly, is the longest night of moonlight. It's sort of the opposite of the summer solstice. And that will be an occurrence next year. So that's what I discovered at Avebury, a huge long lunar cycle and many other earth energies as well there. I mean, not just Leylines and earth currents that have been widely mooted by authors like Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst. Hamish forwarded my book. I went on to discover much more powerful energies there. And so I feel that Avebury was an opening doorway for me to become who I am.
So what would be the ceremony or intention during that high lunar moon?
Well, I was fortunate enough to experience that at Avebury 18.61 years ago
Oh, wow.
into 2006. But not only that, I learned from a master, well, mistress, I should say, Margaret Curtis, who discovered the most southerly moonrise in Callanish, and I'll be doing a tour there next year. And she took me under her wing. She discovered the moon at its most southerly. So if you imagine that Avebury is at its most northerly, in Callanish on the Isle of Lewis is at its most southerly. It doesn't rise much. And what I realized there was it's an association with all of the very feminine earth energies, not just kind of late. So let's just think beyond the lay for one moment. And all of the earth's inner like spiral patterns that are manifestations of feminine earth energy, they become really powerful. And it's a night for the high priestess. It's a night for the divine feminine, whether you're masculine or feminine by gender. It is a really powerful night where everything is expansive in one's consciousness. So you can set your intent for growth, for a higher consciousness. You could set it for what you want, but everything is in resonance. The feminine, the earth energies that are feminine, and the moon on high, which is feminine, and us as the in-between person. It is a beautiful, beautiful night, and it has such a feel about it. Okay, we all get a feel about the full moon, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes? You're nodding? Wow, wait till you have the night of the high moon. If you could imagine then, you know, like rock stars say, you're going to turn it up to volume number 11. That's what it's like on the night of the high moon.
Can you tell us the actual date?
It really does depend where you are in your latitude and
Yeah.
your longitude, okay? So it's in a cycle. So if we imagine that the cycle is kind of in the here and now, in this year, and it's going to be moving, and this is what happens. It kind of moves up to the beginning of, say, May might be a good time on Vancouver Island. To be honest, I'd like to check that, you know, rather than just saying randomly. But it's when the sun stands still at the solstice, which means sun still, solstice, that's what the moon does. And in fact, it rises in the same place at the same time within 2 hours that it did 18.61 years ago, in exactly the same position. And the ancients at Stonehenge, the ancients at Callanish and Avebury, that's what they were looking for. Now, if you said to me now, Peter, how did you calculate that, Maria? I would go, oh, I know an astronomer who uses software. And then you would go, well, how come, Maria? Did the ancients know how to incorporate that into their ancient sites? Because they didn't need software. They were expert, in tune with the landscape, in tune with the moon, and in tune with, I think, what I call natural mathematics. You know, when it comes naturally rather than strained.
Thank you.
And that kind of leads us into the next question, just talking about the sound frequencies that accompany the energies of the earth, the moon, the music of the spheres, and what you call the music of Gaia, which is the harmonic ratios of the earth energy currents. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, because it is one of the discoveries that is close to my heart, that I believe Gaia revealed or guided me to find. Kepler and, well, before that, Pythagoras. We've all heard of Pythagoras. Then we all get nervous. Somebody's going to be talking about mathematics, but we're not. Yeah. Pythagoras discovered the music of the spheres. So if you imagine all of the planets in their planetary circular, well, they're ecliptic motions, that they have like mathematical ratios between them. Let's just envision that. And those ratios are musical. So Pythagoras in legend is said to have heard the music of the spheres. And whereas Kepler, much later on, he was kind of like a late medieval astrologer and astronomer. He also expanded upon the music of the spheres and said the soul could hear it where the ears cannot. And then I thought, well, that's an amazing thing. Everybody talks about that in sacred geometry. And then I was working with one of my tutors about 10 years ago on sacred geometry. I do a lot of sacred geometry with ancient sites. And he was showing me these patterns of Stonehenge. And I went, whoa, like you do. I know what that pattern is. That's earth energy. What you have just described is the exact earth energy pattern that Stonehenge stands upon. And he said, well, this is musical ratios. Now imagine this. If you're in between what's called the Sarsen lintel stone circle, which is famous, it's the ones with all the lintels on top that go around. And inside of that, you have a blue stone circle. That gap in between the Sarsens and the blue stones, which is evident if you go there, that's what's called the major third. So what's a major third? Christians always use that in their music because it heightens the emotions. It raises your consciousness. So if you imagine singing in the major third at a Gothic cathedral, now let's take it back. And then say you're in Stonehenge and you could meditate, the soul may be able to hear those frequencies. Or indeed, you could be singing in harmony at these places, or using musical instruments to be in with that type of energy that's coming out of the ground, but also that we can sing and meditate to. So I think I decided to call it the music of the earth, or Gaia's music, because I don't think it's a coincidence. You know, I think everything is by design. Everything is for a purpose. And so Stonehenge is absolutely unique because it contains lots of different musical ratios that will raise your consciousness as you're heading for the octave, which is like going from C low to C high, like duh, duh. That's like raising an octave. And when you raise an octave, you raise your consciousness. So I think Gaia isn't just about earth energy patterns or earth currents or lays. It's about sound. It's about frequency, and it's about music, adding to her beauty and her worth and her merit.
Can you share a little bit about how we personally can walk on this beautiful earth in harmony?
One way in which we can do that is we can find earth energy patterns, for example. And one of those earth energy patterns is called a geospiral. And a geospiral is very, very powerful. It's feminine earth energy, and it consists of 7 coils. Imagine a spiral with 7 coils. Well, why does that happen? Some of your audience may say. It happens because it's the harmonic surface pattern of very, very deep water that is born within the womb of Gaia. As an esoteric water diviner and grown up, I know in that environment, I know there's 2 types of water. Water that falls from the heavens and fills up the aquifers and underground streams. And don't I know that as a Brit? It hasn't stopped raining for months. It really hasn't. Well, that's groundwater. That's masculine water. It's falling from the sky. And in esoteric water divining law, you have sacred inner water, and that produces a spiral pattern. And wherever you can find that, that has what's called the musical harmonic of the perfect fifth. And what's the perfect fifth? It's when music flows from one note to another with ease. You know, when you listen to music and it's got ease about it, that's the perfect fifth. And anything that crosses a perfect fifth, be that an energy shape of Gaia, be that you singing it, it goes with ease and goes on to the next place, and it allows flow of harmony as well. So by just finding some of these earth energy patterns, we can equate ourselves to music. And I honestly can't sing that well. You know, I wish I could do a performance here now in the perfect fifth. I can't. But a bit like what Kepler said, maybe my soul is hearing all of this. And even if I don't sing, I'm experiencing ease of flow. So I say to people with arthritis, for example, or those kind of illnesses that make us sometimes a bit rigid, and sometimes we carry that on our shoulders, for example, intention. When we go onto these energy patterns, we can allow that flow to come back through our bodies rather than being rigid. And I've had some really good results from people with arthritis saying that it's been of a definite help with them working with this energy pattern. I'm not saying it's curative at all, but I'm saying it allows that ease to come back and flow within us. And sometimes even when I write a lot of books, as you guys know, and if I get writer's block, well, I'm hot footing it to a geospiral to let that energy flow again. And it does with ease, with nature, and it's natural.
Beautiful, thank you.
Beautiful. And one final question in this part that ties also in with seed planting and charging seeds. You had mentioned that you have a special method for charging seeds that we'd love to hear a little bit more about.
Many years ago, I got inspired by an author called John Burke. He wrote a very good book called Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty. But I thought that he was right for the wrong reason, because he was charging seeds up in places, and some of them would grow really much faster and straighter. And I thought, no, it's not just about the place. It's about the power of place. It's about the energy of place. It's about these energy patterns and tying them up with cycles of the moon, for example. And so I set to work. I thought, you know, there's no point in just saying, I think this, I'm going to prove it. So I decided to charge some seeds up at a particular location that had been ruinous, because in John Burke's theory, it had to be a chamber, a prehistoric chamber. I think it's the energy. So I thought I'd choose a ruinous chamber. I'll go for the energy. I planted the seed with a control as well to, you know, monitor it by. And I did it in a very professional manner under guidance of an agriculturist. And lo and behold, the seed grew twice as fast and twice as straight. That's a very important concept. But more than that, it was a hot summer. Yes, occasionally England does have them. It was a hot summer. And so I decided to withdraw water from the seedlings, and the ones that had been charged up on geospiral energy and other spiral energy of the particular cycle of the moon, they stayed far stronger when the others started to wilt quite quickly. So I see and envision and hope and pray that we go back to the old ways of our ancestors to grow food. Because when I was studying at Oxford for a CATS degree program, I realized when we were looking at agricultural farming in prehistoric times, why are they repeating this pattern? It's a pattern, and they're repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. Well, you don't do that unless something works, okay? And then I kind of had a look, and then I went out in the field, I doused with different energies there, and realized, oh my goodness, it goes far beyond what John Burke first said. They are charging sites at ancient sites, but on the geospiral energy pattern and other spirals, but then they know where to plant. And they were looking for particular earth energies that occur naturally and interlace the planet. So I could be living here, you're on Vancouver Island, someone could be in Africa. They interlace the planet, and that's what they were looking for. But their wisdom was great because they also knew what plants don't like and what cattle don't like. And they were monitoring those and marking them out in the landscape as well. So the whole of the landscape was in harmony with Gaia. So I truly believe, and I measured as well, and just to add on some of the earth energy patterns, I went out and measured in the field, one when they grew on different types of earth energy, they were much, much taller. And I've got measurements of this. So I see that the ancients were adept at living in harmony with Gaia. And there's a fact that I think is very interesting, that according to archaeologists, the yield per acre of the late Bronze Age, that's the time of, Avebury and other places, during the late Bronze Age and the early Iron Age, per acreage, their yield could not be beaten until the advent of fertilizers in the 1950s. So their yields could not have been beaten. And again, that's because they're living in harmony with the earth and they're following a formula. And it's not hard to deduce or to decode a landscape once you know particular energies. It really isn't. I believe anyone can do it. And that's what inspired me to write those 2 chapters in that book, is try it out. It seems to work. And there is a farm in Vermont in America that is going to be taking me up on this on a much larger scale. And if it does prove positive, which I think it will, I think this is a template ahead for organic farming to go in harmony with other holistic gardening practices, not to be used by its own, but to be incorporated into many different disciplines.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's so exciting. Yeah.
So we'd love to hear about your new book, The History of Stonehenge, and also the significance of the elongated skulls.
The significance of the elongated skulls was a beautiful journey for me. It really was. It started some time ago in 2015 when I was called to go to the longest long barrow in Northwest Europe, which just happens to be on the Salisbury Plain, not that far from Stonehenge. And it was a kind of a call, I call it a calling, because again, I don't think things are by accident. I think that there's a greater plan above us all. And so I went there and I led on the long barrow and I just said, who are you? And because it was the longest long barrow, in other long barrows throughout the British Isles, it meant more than one person. There were, at West Kennet Long Barrow, which you've been to, Peter, in the Avebury environs, up to 34 people were buried there. So I thought, bingo, I've got hundreds of people of Stonehenge beneath me. No, it was raised for one person and one person alone, and that is so unusual in the Neolithic. And I thought, I've got to find out who this person was, and it was a woman. And so it kind of led me to Cambridge University, where I photographed the skull. But I know that you two are kind, beautiful, sensitive people, so you may understand what I'm going to say next. I kind of ranted to Great Spirit, get the curator out of the room, get the curator out of the room. And the curator left for a little while and said, you don't mind being alone with this skull, do you? No, I'll just be here. I took that opportunity to very gently put my hands over by her throat chakra, then up to her third eye and over her long skull to kind of see if I could feel the remnants of chakra activity. And intriguingly, over the top of the head, I got 2 pulse points, like 2 crown chakras, because of the elongated skull. And then from that moment on, I just thought, I've got to find out about this long lost civilization, because I only had a skull to go on originally. Then I got measurement bones of femurs and found out that they were very short. The women were about 4'9", the men were about 5'4". And then very round a corner I went, and the research got stranger. According to anthropologists writing at the time of them observing the skulls, all reports are made by archaeologists and anthropologists, they kept saying time and again, the ear placement is further back. And I thought, well, if the ear placement is further back and they're quite short, could this be where one of the origins of the Fae, the Pixie, come from? And that was quite strange. And then I realized by reading more anthropological reports that even though they had long skulls, their heads were really small. They were 1/10 of their body. Yours and mine is 1/8. It's how designers design clothes and things like that. And artists learn to draw. And so here we are. You've got a very long body with this short and small face with an elongated skull with ears set backwards. Then another strange thing came to my attention. And the anthropologists were saying, their middle ear, their ear bones are different. So I presented this to a lovely doctor. She's an angel that works in A&E London on a Friday night. I mean, could you imagine that? She's a true angel. And I gave her the report and she said, no, this is wrong, Maria. And I said, I've copy, cut, paste it for you. And I've done several. It's not a typo. This is what they're saying. And I said, but what if it was correct? And let's just go down that path for one moment. And she said they'd be hearing different frequencies. That's the potential in that. Well, we've just talked about the music of the earth. And some of the energies that come out of standing stones that are rooted into earth energies or lays, well, they come out at 18 hertz. We hear at 20. Could it be that our ancient ancestors heard the energy and sound coming out of the stones? I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility.
Wow.
Amazing.
So for me, the elongated skulled people are a mythical looking race that raised Stonehenge. They raised other sites besides, and they were, I believe, listening to Gaia.
So how did this interaction affect you personally?
It affected me personally because when I led on her long barrow and I was on the Salisbury Plain, I just had one of those moments where I really, really felt at one with this long lost civilization. I mean, at one. It was like I was one of them, maybe in a past life. And then I just realized that this was their landscape that we have inherited and how precious that was to them. And in fact, it led me to do something that some people think is a little bit crazy. Some people have commented, they think it's was a waste of my time. But when I realized that the antiquarians were basically taking all of their artifacts, putting them in museums, especially the gold and the really luxurious burial deposits, I bought a very expensive book. It's a huge, big book. I love it. It's got all of the antiquarian pictures of every single find that they ever unearthed around Wiltshire. A fascinating book written at the turn of the last century. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go on a mission. I'm going to photocopy all of their artifacts. And some of them were beautiful incense pots and other things besides. And I decided I'd return it to their graves. By paper alone, it's obviously I can't return the real artifact. I'd be arrested in the British Museum, I can assure you, and run out of town to boot. But I decided it was a gesture to reunite the people of the past with that which was taken.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah,
I can really feel, the gratitude.
And it was an emotional journey because, I mean, you imagine being a Bronze Age high priestess of Stonehenge. They were beautifully dressed. People, you know what really annoys me, Peter? I take people to Silbury Hill and I'm pointing at the English Heritage Notice Board and they make the people look, you know, like hair all over the place, wearing animal skins. And I'm saying, no, 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 that's not what they were. I've looked into the fabrics of the ancient past. I've looked into, as you know, the earth energies of the ancient past. And here's the thing. They had very finely woven material, 2 per centimeter or inch, depending if you do imperial or metric, more finer weaving than we have in our clothes today. So they would have looked very fine. They had gold trestles in their hair. They were wearing amber breastplates, really big, like this, coming down their front. They were carrying really beautiful staffs. So I would really like to, just for devilment, as we say here, do my own little depiction, stick it down on the notice board. This is the people of the past, and they were so sensitive to these earth energies and their music. It's beyond our comprehension. We talk about earth energies and lays as being stagnant, just what it's been lines in the landscape, whereas these people, we know that they rise out all and affect our chakra system, but I think that they were so sensitive to their nuances, and so where they knew where to stand, where to walk, and where, I believe, even to charge up their jewelry and their artifacts as well. So let's see the priestess and priests of Stonehenge to be in their finery. Yeah, that they were really so fine. And then you had the shamanic kind of people of the past as well. So you have all of these king of blings with their jewels, and I've got a beautiful exact replica of what a Stonehenge priestess wore. Actually, I'm not wearing it today, but it's absolutely amazing. It's like a crescent moon going downwards where the horns face downwards. But there's also the shamanic people of the past, and the artifacts that were taken from their burials. Well, if you imagine you're wearing a cloak, again, very finely woven, and on the bottom you've got all boar's teeth. So when you walked or danced, you clatter, 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 like that. So they were, I think, you know, tune into these nights of the high moon and the sun cycle and having amazing ceremonies, which would have been quite something to have watched.
So you've got some exciting events coming up this summer. Can you talk about your Glastonbury Magic Square workshop in July?
Yes, that's on July the 6th, obviously in Glastonbury at the Abbey, and we'll be visiting Chalice Well and the Tor, which I know you know well as well, Peter. And I've actually been to these places with dearest Peter as well. And I'll be teaching about magic squares. Imagine in the earth that you have spiral earth energy patterns, you have circular earth energy patterns, or you have a near square shape as well. By near square, let's not think of it as all being linear. You see what I mean? It can be like near enough a square shape. It was the Kogi Indians that taught a master dowser from Europe about these very magical squares that they look for in the landscape. They're called mamos to the Kogi Indian, their high priests and geomancers, people that look for earth energy. And they spend the first 14 years of their life in a very subdued light environment so that when they are introduced to earth energies, they see them. And to the Kogi, if you said, what's the strongest earth energies to one of their mamos, they would say the spiral, the circle, and the square. And they're iconic in our culture when you think of it. They are so iconic. And they're just linked with ley lines as well. The ley line kind of links this energy, but it's these energy patterns that give life to the lays and the earth currents, for example, they're the breath of the mother that feeds the energy system. So yes, so I'd be looking into these energy patterns, how they were used by Western magicians like Cornelius Agrippa of the 15th century and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and how they give birth to numerology as well. So I'd be kind of including a very mystical side to that, but it will be hands-on, great dowsing in Glastonbury. And, you know, I just love returning to Glastonbury year after year, doing something different. What's not to like?
So is there a particular location in Glastonbury where you'll be doing that magic square on the ground?
There's 2 magic squares that are along the axis line of Glastonbury Abbey, and the axis line is set by the Mary current, which is a meandering current, and it crosses the Michael, the masculine current, at the high altar. And I've always called that the geo cross in the land, because you've got an earth current going that way and an earth current going that way. That was the energy that the Knights Templar, the Masons, and the Christians were looking for. It was their symbol in the land. Whereas, you know, the Neolithic and the Long Skulled and the Bronze Age and the Druids, they were looking for the circle in the land. So it's kind of different cultural background, if you see what I mean. But the magic squares can help with manifestation. They can help with protection. They have a very, very magical root. They're at the heart of Feng Shui to the ancient Chinese. They call it Lo Shu. We would call it the magic square of Saturn, 3 times 3 magic. Okay, so it's used throughout culture, and in fact, it's at the heart of all magic of ancient China as well as Western magic.
You also have another workshop coming up this summer. I think it's August 24th to 25th at Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. And this really caught my interest because we were there, well, quite several years ago now. And what I really felt when I was there was that energy of the Great North Road, just standing there on the edge of the canyon, and literally you can literally feel almost what feels like a wind blowing. The energy is so strong, just propelling the energy northward there. So I would love to hear more about the workshop and also your discoveries around Chaco Canyon.
Well, you're so right. I mean, the Great North Road, it has its own personality. And what I realized about the Great North Road was it's not a road, it's a lay. It's a huge lay that goes north to south. In fact, Professor Steve Lexon, he's written a book called The Chaco Meridian. He says the same thing, but he calls it a linear alignment. He's not going to call it a lay. But it's the closest thing an archaeologist has ever said that it comes close to a lay. So that's its power, and it goes all the way up to Aztec ruins towards the north, which is wonderful. That's a great ancient site, and way down south into Mexico, Culiacán. So it's huge, and the civilizations were moving their culture along this lay. Okay, and it's not just that, because when you think about Chaco Canyon and you look at the latest reports about it, it's the worst place to farm. That's why you've got Farmington up the road. Farmington, which is about 40 minutes away, where most people stay, that's the wise place to have a settlement. It was because of these huge earth energies that can manifest in a kind of almost like a semicircular shape like this. And what are the shapes of Pueblo Bonito? It's that template of that circular shape, which originally Pueblo Bonito had up to 850 rooms. It could have been 4 stories high. It was a palace and a temple with 36 kivas alone associated to that temple space. Now, what I realized was I've trained with people like Hamish Miller, who discovered the Mary and Michael earth currents that entwine a ley line. What do I mean by that? If you imagine a straight line, a ley, and then it has 2 currents entwining it, a bit like the caduceus symbol strand of DNA. Well, I was wondering at Chaco, because I discovered a whole ley system slightly different to that in Egypt. I thought, well, I'll try in Chaco Canyon. And then I discovered two mighty currents that are flowing around that lake. And here's the thing, I thought I'll look at some placements of where the sites are, expecting them all just to be on the lake. No, they were to either side, which baffles archaeologists. Why have you got some on a straight line, but their sites either side? Well, that's because they're on the earth currents, just like in this area. You don't just get sites on the ley, you get the more powerful sites on the sentient earth currents. That's where you get the most powerful sites, not on the ley. And so I thought, I set to work again and realized that one was male and one was female. But the architecture at places like Chaco, they have what's called tea doors. And tea doors are very ceremonial. They found them on mugs that they had cacao in. So this T shape that they figured as for like doors and windows, if you will, was really sacred. And that relates to one of those currents. So wherever you see that, you can start to figure out where the currents are going. So I plotted them all along from the south right up to Colorado, actually, the Canyon of the Ancients, and a place at Verm. Oh, I can't remember the name of the place now. Spruce Tree House. That's where it was. They had tea doors up there as well. So I think it's really powerful. And the Chinese were very, very aware of earth energies. And they always said, energy travels too fast along a straight line. You don't want to live on that. It travels too fast. And agricultural archaeologists and well, doing a lot of experiments with seeds on straight lines, they found the seeds got stunted. We were talking about, good places to grow food. Well, leys are not a good place. And that's why the Chinese have these bowed roofs, because the chi will go slower in a bow and it will go in a straight line. So these living earth currents that surround the ley, they're the most conducive to be above.
Interesting. And you kind of you discern these as being what you call deer and wolf. Did you want to talk a little bit about how you discern those archetypes through the currents?
Absolutely, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. Well, Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst called their currents Mary and Michael because Christian churches dedicated to Mary and Michael were on the energy currents. And obviously, you're not in a Christian environment in Chaco Canyon. You're in a really amazing environment. And suddenly it came to me that one was wolf and one was deer. And I thought that's opposite. Okay, they're opposite. They're like yin and yang opposite. Then I thought, is that, we question ourselves sometimes. And I was questioning and I'm thinking, is that real? So I started to look at what Chaco meant. And it means hunting ground. So wolf and deer would have been there representing, I don't think they're necessarily the chase of hunting, but the kind of union of two animals. And then I came back to the UK and I was traveling to a tour which is further to the south of me, thinking about, wolf and deer and how amazing my experience at Chaco Canyon was. And I literally looked out of the window over to a woodland and I saw a white stag, a pure white stag. And then I just thought, stop questioning yourself, Maria. I think the landscape is a little bit obvious now. And I remember being in such gratitude of seeing it was like a ghost, like otherworld stag. It really was. And it took my breath away. And I had some tears over it because it was just such a magnificent animal. And then I realized Chaco has that magnificence like you experienced, that the beautiful way you said it about that kind of breath. So yes, so I think people that go to Chaco probably come away different.
Yes, I definitely felt changed by that experience and having that energy flowing through. And when I read your newsletter, I think it was your February newsletter when you were talking about Chaco Canyon and your workshop, you also mentioned that the connection, when you looked up the word Chaco, what you realized was that it actually comes from the Quechua language for hunting ground. So could you speak to that a little bit about how there is a connection between the Andean peoples, the Q'ero, the Quechua peoples of South America and Chaco Canyon? Did they migrate up from the south?
Well, it's thought by, again, if we look to, it's Boulder University actually that has looked into a lot of the migration patterns along what they call the meridian line, which I call a ley, call it a meridian, a ley. It's the same thing. And it's believed that there was a cultural identity from the south that was influencing Chaco greatly. And so they had very fine macaw feathers as well. They were importing cacao, you know, a kind of bit buzzy chocolate drink. And they were adopting the same tea door that I mentioned earlier. It's a very distinctive architectural feature. And that starts way, way down. You get it at places like Pacume and other places besides. So it really is that kind of the South influencing the North, and they could trade a lot as well. You know, a lot of trade was in occurrence, which you find. The other thing I love about Chaco, you're going to probably think I'm a right feminist now. The audience, oh dear, Maria's a feminist. I'm not really. But what I did love about the latest reports coming out of Chaco is it was a matriarchal society, and there was a lot of women in very prominent positions. It's now believed now. And that's what Stonehenge was like back in the Neolithic. It was very much a gentle but powerful woman movement as well. So I see that kind of identity. And what I really like about Chaco is they must have identified with people that are slightly unusual in some way, because you have what's called room number 33 and by 36, because they're rooms, they're lots of tiny rooms at Chaco. And somebody, and I would like to think it was one of the high priests, put his handprint into the soft, pliable ply that they were working with, and he had 6 fingers. But that must have been quite revered. Do you see what I mean? Revered at that time. So I think Chaco is a greatness because of the influences from the south. But before they all moved south, because they did leave Chaco at some point, and then they went north to Aztec ruins, which has a really fantastic, and we'll be going there on the second day. It has a really fantastic reconstructed kiva that you can experience. It's like going into the womb, because the kivas at Chaco and other places besides are open these days. They're like circular, sacred, ceremonial areas. But originally they were under roof, so to speak, and you'd come down from the top of the roof on a ladder, and you could experience that at Aztec ruins. So then the culture went north, and then they went back to their roots. They went back down to the south, to Culiacán and places like that. So it was almost like this ley inspired movement for whole cultures to move to. And the greatness of Aztec ruins, where Chaco took 100 or so years to construct, when they moved north to Aztec ruins, they built the same in 10 years. So they were master masons organizing all of this. Can you imagine the practicalities of feeding all of these people? It's like building the pyramids. You have to have a really good infrastructure, and they were looking for these powerful types of earth energies. And Pueblo Bonito and Chaco Canyon was the template. Not all of the great houses that are that semicircular shape are on that energy, but it's the template. Do you see what I mean? They were replicating what Chaco had. And I was talking about the moon's most northerly moonrise earlier. Well, the Chaco astronomers were incredible. Because if you imagine they've got long back walls, just to keep it very simple, and that long back wall on some of the buildings, that too aligns to the most northerly moonrise. There's 2 structures at Chaco that have incorporated that. And also for the people that like to visit that part of the world, you have what's called Chimney Rock. And Chimney Rock is a natural kind of beautiful land formation of rock. Literally, it's what nature gives us. What does Gaia give us? It's a true blessing. And the moon, in its most northerly, lines perfectly between those rocks. So, I mean, the ancients from Stonehenge, the ancients from Avebury to Chaco to Chimney Rock, and more places besides in Colorado. They were looking for this particular divine, beautiful moonrise. And like I said, it will give you volume 11. It will be like no other full moon. People think eclipses are really special. That's in their consciousness, and this moonrise should be in everybody's consciousness coming up. And like I say, I'm going to do a big tour to Calanis. That's the best place to see it, I believe, in this part of the world. This needs to be in our consciousness because it can change our lives, and it can change the life of the divine feminine in everyone and everything. And we need that nurture inside. We need that love. We need that mother inside now to allow us to grow even more. And I think the night of the high moon is going to allow us to grow.
Wonderful. Another element with Chaco is Pajada Butte, where they had the sun dagger again at organized alignments. Did you manage to go there?
No, that's off ground because I think you have to be indigenous now to visit that, a bit like at Chimney Rock. And that also, I mean, yes, it's that beautiful sunlit dagger, but the moon does that every 9 years. Now, I've talked about the 18.61 cycle, where if you imagine every 9 years, it's at a prominent midpoint position of the wider cycle of 18.61 years. Well, lo and behold, it was then discovered during, it's called the Solstice Project, that discovered that it was realized that the moon casts its shadow as well as the sun there. So again, it's in everybody's consciousness, the sun, the solstice. Do you see what I'm saying now? And then that took it later to even find then the sun one. So I think, yeah, let's get this into our consciousness that there's a night approaching, and it'll be springtime for you guys next year. And I can, get some good fine calculations for you because I know an astronomer of Glasgow University that helps me calculate all of my astronomical finds. Because he's got the brain. I got the intuition that kind of figures it out, but I haven't got the mathematical skill to precisely determine particular dates.
Well, that'd be wonderful. Yeah. So you've obviously got so much to offer, Maria, on so many different levels. So how can people connect with you, learn more about your work, your books, and your workshops?
My workshops, I got lots on Zoom, like we all have now. We're zooming around here, zooming around there. And you can find about those on esotericcollege.com. And my tour platform is, we've been talking about our beloved Avebury. My tour platform is the Avebury, Avebury, the Avebury Experience.co.uk. And if you're befuzzled and can't remember Esoteric College or the Avebury Experience.co.uk, just go to mariawheatley.uk. I'm a Brit. I'm Maria Wheatley. So you can go to that. That's my landing page. And then that will take you to any of my sites anyway. So yes, and it's always a pleasure to hear from people from all over the world. And it's always lovely to be a part of allowing people to learn more about the earth and her energies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And we always love to end by asking our guests the question of what is your greatest dream for the world right now?
My greatest dream for the world right now is uniting. I think there's so much division in countries through politics, through ideas, through ideologies. And I think it's a time for humanity to unite and come together and just realize we're all one. And, we can all come together and hopefully live in harmony, especially with conflicts in the Middle East. That again, there's all of this division. I truly long for the time of union again.
Thank you so much. We will hold space with you for that dream. And thank you so much for speaking with us today. I really want to thank you so much for bringing this masculine and the feminine back to the balance. Thank you so much for all of your hard work.
No, thank you.
And I'd like to add, I know, Maria, that you've had some challenges with authority over you, and that you've managed to navigate your way through. You've got that feminine warrior instinct, which I really admire in you. And I just want to invite you to continue doing the great work. And you know that you have our total support here on Vancouver Island.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing. I remember my time with you on Vancouver Island very fondly, and more fondly with the amazing tour that we had all those years ago, going around the ancient sites here. It was a magical time. Thank you.
Well, you'll be glad to know that the work that you did at Harry's property, we continue to work with that now. We actually have a meeting there on Sunday. So we meet there every month with a group of people, and the energies have really continued to build on the property. In fact, Harry sometimes has to leave. It's so powerful.
Oh, that's funny. Oh God, let's say hi, a very warm hi to him. How lovely.
Absolutely, will do.
How
Yeah.
lovely.
Okay.